Penny comes back in the room. Okay.
We already said that. Oh, this was 3-1. This was 3-1 and this one was
4-5. At the bottom, 4-5.
I misspelled Mr. Gola's name. Oh, lovely.
Do this. We're going to call to order the Planning and Architecture Review Board for City of Flagler Beach, April 5th, 2022 at 5:30 p.m. Steve, would you lead the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call.
Scott Spradley. Here. Brenda Witherspoon. Present. Paul Chestnut.
Here.
Vice Chairman Joseph Pizzoli.
Here.
Catherine Fine. Here. Joanne Soman. Here. Scott Chapius is absent today.
Okay, approval of the meeting of the minutes.
I have, I need to read this form. On the March 1st, 2022 Planning Board meeting, Brenda Witherspoon filed Form 8B, Memorandum of Voting Conflict for County, Municipal, and other local public offenders, or officers. Offenders. Same thing. And the reason being, have complained to the city about the venue prior to the vote, lived close to the applicant's business. And then I also have a correction on page 6 of the meeting minutes. I spelled the owner's name, Mr. Gola, and it's Bula. So just, if we approve those, it would be with the correction.
There. Second line from the bottom is where that is.
So what's his name?
Ula, is that a U? Ula?
It's BHOO.
I completely
LA.
spelled his name wrong.
Whatever.
Yeah. BHOO. Any other comments for the meeting minutes? Corrections, clarifications?
Motion to approve?
Okay. Motion to approve?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, meeting minutes approved. Okay, old business. Application OE-22-03-01, applicant request approval of an outdoor entertainment permit, Life's a Beach Sandbar and Grill.
And I'll explain my reasons in a minute, but I'm going to ask you to table this item, but before I do that, you need to read your voting conflict form again. The new one,
So it's tabled.
or just announce the voting conflict. You don't have to read the form, you can just announce the same thing that you wrote down.
I do acknowledge that I have a voting complex conflict. In my notes, I said I have complained to the city prior to the PAR board appointment, and I live within 200 feet of the business.
Thank you. Mr. McGuire's office contacted me late this afternoon before I drove over here. He had an emergency come up. He was hoping to be able to still make it, but we found out before everybody started coming in that he is not going to be able to make it. His client is also unavailable, and I told them that I would request that you to table it so that it can be moved to a meeting when they can be here.
Okay. Do we need to do anything? Do we need to make a motion? Okay, there you go.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, table them. Applicant OE22. New business, applicant SPEX 22-04-01, an application request to develop a single-family residence in the Tourist Commercial Zoning District. Staff, Larry?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Again, this is what's become a standard for a single-family residential use in the Tourist Commercial Zoning District. I believe a revised set of elevation plans was distributed to the planning board. Very quickly, and for sake of time, I can tell you that all of the development standards, with the exception of the building height, was compliant and is compliant with the regulations that govern the development standards for single-family residential. We have received, as I said earlier, revised plans that do address the building height. Those revised plans are compliant with the building height regulations of the city. That being said, from a staff perspective, I would recommend the board recommend approval of this special exception request to the City Commission. I'm uncertain if the applicant is present. I don't believe he is, which is unusual, so I don't know. Mr. Attorney, how do we address this? Can we still?
The board can move forward with it without the applicant present.
Okay.
If they, in the past on these, the reason for wanting the applicant to be present is so that they can give that reminder that we do, that you could have commercial go in next to you.
Right.
I kind of think they're aware of that. I'm not speaking for the applicant, but this is just 2 lots north of the Java joint. So that being said, I'm open to answer any questions from the board.
I know the builder and I know the residential designer. They're local. They've been here for a long time, and actually the designer used to work for me, so I know that he's very much aware of tourist commercial. I have no problem moving forward if we want to do so.
But he's aware of the height, right?
Oh, yeah, he knows that there's just a standard.
I had communication with the builder.
Okay.
And actually, I didn't expect to get the revised plans this quickly. So the recommendations that are on the back of the staff report do not apply any further because he has submitted revised plans that address the building height issue.
Was it taller before?
Yes. What they did, if you look at the plans that are submitted in the packet, and actually I included a building elevation sheet that shows you what they did. There's 2 different roof elevations. Mm-hmm. And whoever did the calculation used the ridge of the higher roof and the eave of the lower roof. In reality, there's two different roofs. There's a hip roof and a gable, and you have to do your calculation based on the highest roof. So that they were over about, I believe, about 3 feet for the mean average. And what they've done is just redesigned the trusses, and they lowered it back down. So I'm very comfortable that they are in compliance.
Just the CCC line, right? The coastal construction line, you said the property was in front of, totally in front of it. We don't have anything to do with that. That's the state, right?
Yes, we don't really have anything to do with it, but the coastal construction line is basically on the back property line.
Right,
Pretty close,
right. So that's their issue.
yes.
Okay.
It will be on pilings.
Yeah. Are there any other board members that would have any problem approving this or discussing it, making a motion?
My only issue was coming in today was the roof height. So, and that was the only issue that staff had commented on negatively. So I'm good with it.
Yes, and my question was the CCL line, but again, they have to meet the requirements of that. So
Correct.
it's really not a part of our vote.
No.
I like the design. It's
Yep.
a nice home.
Yeah, I think the design, as opposed to the last time we had to approve a special exception, this one has all 4 elevations that are delineated nicely, so. Oh, any public comment? Seeing no public comment, we can move forward with a motion.
I'll move that we recommend approval of SEEX number 22-04-01, request for special exception use.
And I'll second it.
Can I, excuse me, I'm sorry for interrupting. Can you perhaps address that you are recommending approval of the amended
Oh, sorry.
building elevation plans?
Add that.
Thank you.
Got it.
Just to be clear, the approval is for the special exception, but recognizing the amended building plans.
Correct.
Or elevation.
We're recommending approval, because we don't approve.
Okay. So the motion is recommending approval for the amended set of plans for the special exception. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Motion passed.
That's great.
B, ordinance 2022-05, an ordinance of the city of Flagler Beach, Florida, relating to the outdoor display of retail merchandise, providing location, size, and time requirements for outdoor displays of retail merchandise, providing for codification.
You don't have to read all of it.
Okay.
So this one is just going to be a discussion. I'm not going to ask for a recommendation on this. This went to commission for first reading at their last meeting, and there are some differing opinions on the commission. And so I asked them to task me with trying to find a middle ground, which is what I'm doing, but we thought it was important to still bring this to you and go ahead and hear your feedback too. So you'll see the next draft again. You will see this again, but I wanted to give you an opportunity, and the commission wanted to give you an opportunity to see this now and to also give your input. So as I'm trying to find that middle ground and to tell you the things that I've already modified about what you have in front of you now, the next draft will be subject to your discussion. You may say something that pulls me off of some of these too, but to limit these restrictions to the barrier island, so it would not apply on the landward side. To distinguish and treat differently in terms of size and some of the utilization restrictions, things like propane tank cages, ice machines or ice coolers, outdoor play equipment, specifically describe and have a different set of limitations for things like clothing racks. So by dealing with each of those individually based on what they are, we can then massage the location, size, time requirements that were a big part, I think, of where some of the not conflict, but just debate was occurring in front of the commission. So that's kind of where we're moving toward, a little bit more directed at certain things, so that we make sure that we don't capture things that either need to be outside or really don't cause great objection when they are outside. As Commissioner Cooley pointed out, the city is a beach town, and one of the things that you expect to see at shops is things like surf boogie boards and outdoor play equipment. And so I'm trying to find that middle ground, and I wanted to give you an opportunity to put your 2 cents in while we're still in that process.
Do we have any personal opinions? Brenda?
I watch the commission meetings by TV most of the time as opposed to sitting in here.
I'm sorry, Brenda, can you speak up?
Yeah.
I can't hear you.
Yes, I watch the commission meetings via TV as opposed to coming here, and this was quite an interesting discussion, and it got a lot of attention on social media too. My question to you is where it says retail merchandise display. And I thought the comment from Commissioner Cooley was fair and correct. Knowing how compassionate, or how much compassion that the varying opinions on the commission has, I'm just curious if you believe that the changes that you are suggesting are a fair medium.
I won't know until they tell me.
Okay, because I thought you did a good job.
That's not a commentary on anything. It's just the reality of and it's normal. Sometimes boards have different opinions, and they are. You saw the meeting. They are. There's a fair amount of room between them. So, but that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, and I think it's healthy that we have varying opinions, and I just hope that we're not going to run out and make rules and attack by the actions of a few. So that's all. Thank you.
Any other opinions? Scott?
Drew, a question. Was there any magic to the 12 feet in length?
Just the length of typical displays, and actually a lot of the size and location ideas for this came from Winter Park's Park Avenue district.
I see.
Because so probably the 12 feet came from that. That's how much of the clothing, most of it's clothing in downtown, or in Winter Park or Park Avenue area. So, but no magic. And actually that's part of that is changing, because now we'll be specifically kind of dimensioning ideas for what is a typical propane cache, what is a typical lumber box, because that was another one of the outdoor things that needs to be outside, is firewood. And what are those typical sizes, and then kind of basing it on what's out there now. What are stores using right now, typically.
And my other comment was just that it does seem that limiting it to the barrier island makes sense. You got storefronts like Publix, which is 100 feet of display, and it just doesn't fit what we're trying to do over here on this side. So that makes sense to me.
And to remember Witherspoon's point too, and how I'm trying, part of my effort since that commission meeting has been not just in the balancing, but trying to explain the rationales for both sides. And I think one thing that distinguishes the barrier island from the mainland is we have and continue to put effort into creating a walkable space on the island. The mainland is vehicle driven. I mean, it is and will always be that way. It will not be a pedestrian, zone. This is intended to be a pedestrian zone. And outdoor displays can be done well. They can drive pedestrian traffic, but they can also impair it if they're causing so much clutter that it becomes unsafe to walk across the parking lot. So that's really, and that's, to your question, that's how I'm trying to encourage finding that middle zone, that middle point, is this is how it benefits the walkability of the barrier island.
The 12-foot, if someone has the width or the depth, they could do end-to-end 2 12-footers?
Correct, and that was the idea, because we were trying to push everything back, and some of the dimensions in the draft that I have right now, based on comments that I received, we're allowing a little bit further from the front, I had, as you saw on this one, a clear zone between parking lot and display. Now, in the current draft that I've worked on, as long as you're not in the parking lot and as long as you've preserved a pedestrian path, we're not worried about the depth from the build, or not as worried about depth from building. We still have some limitation on there because we don't want, at least the commission, I think there's agreement on, we don't want the large sprawling outdoor displays. We don't want you moving all of your indoor retail sales outside on a sunny day because you might sell more that way. Mm-hmm. You have indoor retail space for a reason.
Okay. And this is just a critique.
Correct. This is just for discussion. I do not need a motion on this tonight. You will see it again.
Okay. Anyone else have any opinion?
I do have one more question. I think one of the, I thought it was interesting when the shop owner stood up in the meeting because it's coming from his perspective. And when he was saying that he had permission by the landlord to exceed the limits of his space, how are we going to handle that?
One of the things that I put into the next draft is draw a straight line from if it's a single tenant building, corner to right of way, perpendicular line has to be within that zone setback, wherever that setback ends up being. And if you were in a multi-tenant, it would be from corner to corner of tenant space. So you would be limited to that space in front of your either leasehold or owned interest.
Thank you.
Okay. If there's no further comments, do I open it to the public?
You're welcome to. At this point, any comment is a good comment for me.
Okay. Open it up to the public if anyone has an opinion.
I have an opinion. I'm kind of quasi-public.
Okay.
But, I have a question for you, Drew, is item number 6, line 57, where it reads, such displays must be located at least 5 feet from any right-of-way. That basically excludes most all storefronts along A1A. So can that create a problem?
It's actually coming out. That's one of the restrictions that is being pulled out. And so that's what I was saying. That buffer that I tried to create between parking areas and pedestrian areas, which was just a safety one, that buffer is coming out. So you'd still be limited to distance from wall, and you'd still have to protect a pedestrian pathway, but you would not be, that 5-foot space will not be in the next draft.
Okay. Drew, I think we did as best we can.
Thank you, sir.
Same with C, ordinance.
This actually is, the next two these are before you for a recommendation, and they will be. C has not been to the commission yet. They gave the direction to do it, but they have not seen it on first reading yet. And then D, they have seen on first reading, and I've made some changes based on what they gave me at first reading that I will tell you about. But yes, I am seeking a recommendation on the next two. And if you'd like, I can, so C is an ordinance of the City of Flagler Beach, Florida relating to signs, amending Article 7 of the City of Flagler Beach Land Development Regulations relating to sandwich signs, which are A-frame signs. Mm-hmm. And there's your introduction. This came before the commission based on, I think, a business owner's request, or it was brought by a commissioner because of a business owner's request. In the CRA district, we allow A-frame signs, sandwich signs, temporary A-frame signs. and there's an owner outside of the CRA, business owner on the outside of the CRA that would also like to use the A-frame sign, and the city commission thought that it was a good idea to expand that to other businesses as long as they're complying with the regulations of the A-frame signs. And to my knowledge, I know we've never had a code enforcement case at least reach the magistrate on them. I don't think we've had any issues at all with people observing the A-frame sign regulations. And so but that is what this is doing. It's just expanding the area within which expanding the area within which a business owner can use a temporary A-frame sign.
Basically in the tourist commercial.
Correct. From the CRA district, now it's being expanded to the entire tourist commercial district.
I have no problems with that. I like that idea. Larry, do you have any comments on that?
No, none at all. I think it's a positive effort.
Business friendly. Anyone else? Scott?
Drew, just a couple things. I like the ordinance myself, the proposed ordinance, just a couple, I think they're typos. Could you look at line 30 on the first page? Whereas businesses have a, okay. And then one more similar, on the third page, line 93. That first line, a sandwich sign shall be placed in front of the use.
That's existing code, but I agree with you, it is awkward. So I'll look at that, and if we can, if I can, Larry and I, we can put our heads together and see if there's, and while we're at it in this ordinance, go ahead and fix that, because I see it and it does read a little awkward.
And those are my only comments.
Okay. And this one, you do want a recommendation?
Yes, sir, please. Okay. And public comment.
Public comment? Seeing none, public comment closed. Looking for a motion.
I move that we recommend approval of ordinance number 2022-XXXX
As amended.
as amended.
Second.
Okay, any discussion, further discussion? No? Drew, is it proper for me to just, do we want roll call like we used to? Yeah, and I was avoiding that.
On procedural, no. On substantive motions, typically, yes, roll
Okay.
call.
Roll call, please.
Scott Bradley?
Yes.
Brenda Witherspoon?
Yes.
Paul Chestnut?
Yes.
Vice Chair Joseph Pizzoli?
Yes.
Catherine Fine?
Yes.
Joanne Sullivan?
Yes.
Okay. And finally, D, ordinance 202204. In this one, we are not recommending, this is just a...
No, this is also before you for recommendation. This
Okay.
did pass on first reading before the city commission. This
Okay.
is the ordinance that provides for right-of-way utilization agreements, also provides for the city to more efficiently address if we have an issue with either existing or something that's placed in rights-of-way in the future. The main goal of this concept is making sure that we are not having hazards in the right-of-way. Secondary goals would be avoiding clutter and those, but again, if anybody did attend or listen to that meeting, the commission's priorities were very clear: health and safety first, and aesthetics second, and recognizing, as the ordinance does, that there may be things that are inoffensive. Some might like it, some might not, but they're inoffensive and they're not dangerous. And that's what the right-of-way utilization agreement is for, is to allow there to be something placed in the right-of-way, or in the landscape, the lawn portion of the right-of-way, obviously not in the road or not in the sidewalk, but the typically grass portion of the right-of-way, whether it be for beautification or for safety or things like brick pavers. Some cities allow pavers in rights-of-way, some cities do not. And again, as I told the commission, because of the kind of just debate that goes on in communities, I'm seeing more and more jurisdictions, none that I represent, but one that I am the magistrate for, that have just said, you're not putting anything in the right-of-way. period. And I think everybody loses when it reaches that level, because there is some beautification that goes on in rights of way when it's done well. And that's the objective of this, is to try to keep the city involved in that process, make sure that hazards aren't going in there, make sure there is a review process, make sure there are eyes on it, so that we can kind of repair some of the areas that maybe have gotten out of hand in the past, and then move forward with just a slightly modified direction so that everybody benefits in the end.
I agree with what you said. I think that, some people use stone as an alternative material in the swales. It's still available for parking. It's still the city's easement. Some people let shrubs just grow and you can't even see around corners or park in the easement. And I've noticed that the city has currently cleared a lot of those lots where their easement is. I believe it's the city. I'm not quite sure. I think it is. And that's what this is addressing.
Correct.
Right.
I'm not familiar with the lot you're talking about, but
Right.
yes, that's the concept, yes.
Does this address, so like some easements have those big precast concrete pyramids? So is this addressing that as well, where you can't do it because now you can't park there?
Correct.
Okay.
And depending on the size and the hazard of those could fall into the category of you have a year to remove it before we tell you have to remove it. But if it's something large and it's configured in such a way either where somebody could catch a foot, trip, fall, hurt themselves, fall into a roadway, worst case scenario, or large enough where if a car hit it, the car is just going to come like a boulder, as I think we did have one at least at one point in this city, where if somebody hits it, the car is just going to stop and somebody's going to be seriously injured. Those might be the types of things that get dealt with immediately with the power that this gives the city.
Okay. Any other board members' comments, Brenda?
Yes, I do. I do realize that it says will be compatible with the existing utilities. And my largest concern with this, and it affects everybody downline from someone who's a violator, within the 2-block area that I walk my dog late at night quickly, people, for some reason, put Norfolk Island pines underneath the wires, and they're fast-growing. They're negative with hurricanes, and once those are in the power line, they blow. They're made to fall over with hurricanes. I know it says compatible with existing utilities, but I just wish it was spelled out that we just shouldn't plant trees, because the utilities are not on the individual properties, correct?
It
They're on the
depends. They may be, and that's
the
why I was
front.
going to ask you, are these power lines running along the road?
Yes.
Because sometimes power lines have their own easements that are detached from the public right-of-way. But if they're in the public right-of-way, then yes, this would apply. The city could say, no, you cannot, for that very reason.
So with this, are we going to back it up with code enforcement to try to ill the wills that are going to affect everybody if the power lines
That's
come
the
down?
ultimate objective, is to
Okay.
deal with this. If we can't get, again, we've got that period within which we're going to notify, educate, try to cajole people into complying before we get to that point. But eventually, yes, it will have to be dealt with through code enforcement if we have somebody who's offending.
Right, and some of them are hidden as far as the water utilities, because roots are very evasive, and so if I had any druther or any wish, it would be to spell out the trees under the power lines.
No canopy trees under power lines?
Or trees. I mean, the Norfolk Islands aren't necessarily, are they considered canopy?
No, the Norfolk tree actually is an invasive.
It is evasive.
And my question to you is this tree planted in the right-of-way, or is it on private property? Just
Right
growing?
under the power line, which makes
Probably
me believe it's right on the,
Probably, if it's in the right-of-way, the city can just remove it, but
Yeah.
you don't even need a permit. The city actually encourages Norfolk pine to be removed.
yeah. Well, there's at least, there were 2 planted within the past week, and of course, I wasn't going to run down and file a complaint, but I'm just wondering if someone's going to be vigilant about kind of looking out for these things, since we have a year to gear up.
And given Given the purpose of this ordinance, given the configuration, and with those trees in the right-of-way, is it possible that they were wild seeded, that nobody actually planted? They were actually
They
planted?
were house plants.
I suspect the city will not be approving trees in the right-of-way because trees and that strip between sidewalk and curb usually don't get along very well.
You know, the only trees that you may see, and there may be a few around the perimeter of their hotel, are just understory trees, but they're limited to 12, 14 feet in height.
Right. Thank you.
Doesn't line 85 address that? On page 3, where it says vegetation?
It definitely, that was, I think the point Member Witherspoon was making was to specifically state, and I think Larry, you said it better in stating the positive instead of me trying to do the negative with canopy, is if we state here, no understory trees, that way if somebody comes to the city and says, well, I want to plant some trees along the front of my lot, and they're not understory trees, then everybody knows before that application even gets submitted, no, you're not going to be able to do that.
Oh, so that would be on their private property, you're saying?
I'm sorry?
That would be on their private property?
This does allow you to put improvements or vegetation within the right-of-way with appropriate permission.
Right.
So if somebody came forward and asked for permission to put a tree in the right-of-way, and it was in a location where it wasn't going to cause some other problem, the city might consider that application. But if we have a limitation in the ordinance that says only understory trees, and I think that's probably the better way of doing it, because there are some trees, like a crepe myrtle, for instance,
Right.
It's never going to grow up into a power line, but it might offer some beautification that everybody benefits from. So if we say only understory trees are the only trees that will be considered within the right-of-way, not saying we would approve your understory tree, but it's the only type of tree we're going to consider, that would provide some clarification for everybody as applications eventually come in.
Drew, is there language in here that addresses corner lots that would inhibit your sight line? That's their own private property.
This does not address that. I know one of the commissioners has received some comments from the public and has his own ideas. So I am going to ask the commission when this comes forward for second reading if they would like to address that, and I will have some language for them. But whether we should roll that into this or do a separate lot maintenance, my leaning would be to go ahead and deal with the right-of-way and right-of-way ordinance and deal with lot maintenance and lot maintenance ordinance.
We do have that in our current code. The site visibility, where you are supposed to be clear 25 feet back from the edge of pavement on intersecting streets. And then you draw that triangle, and there's quite a few that I noticed around town that are in violation. So it's enforcement.
And I think we modified that last year too. I think after you had come to one of the commission meetings, I think that I was tasked with making some changes there. So I think there have been some modifications made to that already.
So then it would be an enforcement issue. Yeah, I know there are a couple of, there are actually flowering shrubs that are on the corner, but they impede your view to see in one direction of the intersection. Okay.
But the concept there is really the same as a lot of what drives this is, and just like the trees. You plant something today, it's nice and compact and pretty and beautifies everything. But then you don't take care of it, you let it go get taller, and all of a sudden, everything falls apart.
Okay, any other comments?
Drew, a couple things. On definitions, beginning at line 66 for improvements, just so I understand, I think I understand it. Newspaper delivery boxes would be considered an improvement that you would need permission, but a regular post office box would be exempt from having to have any sort of improvement. Is that what that's saying?
Correct.
Okay. Line 117. In the event a permit is secured, the applicant, at the applicant's own expense, shall complete the work specified in the authorization within 30 days.
90 days, I'm sorry, I had a note here, the commission asked me to extend that to 90 days.
Okay, that was my concern. And then one minor, line 195. towards the end of that line, ordinance to obtain written authorization is provided in section 1408, comma, below. I'm just wondering, there should be a period after below, and start a new sentence. I wasn't able to.
Yes, there should be a period, and that should also actually be above.
Okay,
My coordinates wrong.
okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Any other board members? Okay, we'll open it up to the public. Any public comment? Could you state your name, please?
William Whitson, City Manager, 100 Palm Drive. Just want to thank the board for looking at this. This is a gargantuan education task. I'm going to appeal to you to ask for your help. Many citizens don't understand what's public and where their property begins. We would appreciate them mowing the public right of way, okay? One less thing. But it's there for parking, for drainage, for putting your mailbox, for making sure we have utilities. It's there. The rights of way were there before your home was there. It's part of the planning, as you know, of the city, so it can function. But as houses go up and new people come and go, those things get forgotten. So we would appreciate your help in educating. We're going to be working hard. We're not going to try to use this ordinance to make everything look the same. Despite the comments on social media, that was not the point here. The point is we need to manage the public right-of-way better. We've let it go too. I've admitted we've not always been diligent on our side, but once we have this reset, new ordinance, you know, we have a full-time code enforcement officer now, and he's great at education. And so we're going to give it another roll and another go, and appreciate your comments and look forward to working with you. So,
Thank you.
Just a quick question. Is it 15 feet universally in the city?
I don't know if it's universal in the city, but there is no hard and fast. I think that's a typical, but there is no hard and fast rule on
But that's
from
very
center line.
confusing then, right?
It's confusing everywhere. If you really want to add confusion to it, sometimes right-of-way is granted by easement. Sometimes it's granted by fee simple so that you actually own the dirt. But even when it's fee simple and a jurisdiction owns the dirt, if it's ever abandoned, it is still treated like an easement. The courts recognize it. Essentially, it's a light easement or a heavy easement, but a right-of-way is always similar to an easement. But, you know, easements, no roadways are alike. I mean, some are alike, but you can't just expect every right-of-way to be identical.
To be 15 feet, okay.
Mm-hmm.
One thing to clarify that I've seen done in certain situations, a lot of people, number one, they don't know what the right-of-way means. They don't know what the right-of-way line means, but in lieu of using right-of-way, just refer to it as your front property line, because there's a lot, and it's true, there's a misconception that their property extends out to the edge of pavement, and that's not the case.
Right.
But if you say your front property line, you could then say, well, you must have a survey for your property, or at your closing or whatever, you can see where your property line ends and where the right-of-way line begins.
That's a good, and I don't know why I didn't think to when you first asked your question, but on this, how rights of way differ, not just by jurisdiction. These aren't defined, usually aren't determined by jurisdictions. They're often determined by the developments as they're developed. Where I live in my community, which is has a homeowners association, and I'm sure when it was developed, was probably developed as a planned development, my property line extends to the edge of curb, but the city has an easement from edge of curb to back of sidewalk, and that is the right of way. But so to use your example, that's what reminded me, I actually own all the way to the edge of pavement, but the city has a right, the public has a right to walk across my front yard. But it's not that way in every one, and most are like Larry is describing, where my property ends here and the city property begins there and runs to the center,
street,
or
right.
to the other side.
Brenda?
I have a question. Those of us who have alleys, you know, I'm not allowed beyond a certain point. There's an easement back there too. I mean, there are situations where there are massive trees right to the curb. Of course, I would never want a canopy tree taken down, but from here forward, will someone be policing easements in the alleys?
The alleys are included in this, yes. These include all public property. And technically, the alleys are rights-of-way also. I mean, they are defined as rights-of-way.
Not to belabor this, but again, William Woodson again, the purpose of an alley is basically for service. It's for garbage pickup or some utility or some drainage or something like that. I mean, again, the whole purposes of the public rights of way mostly are services and to allow services to be provided.
Okay. If there are no further comments, we can entertain a motion.
Motion to recommend ordinance number 2022-04
And is that as amended?
as amended.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a first, we have a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Rex Bradley,
Yes.
Brenda Witherspoon,
Yes.
Paul Chestnut,
Yes.
Vice Chair Joseph Zuli,
Yes.
Catherine Klein,
Yes.
Julian Sutton.
Yes.
Okay. E, election of Planning and Architectural Review Board Chairman
I think I should have put chairman and vice chairman.
and Vice Chairman, yes.
Are we nominating right now? Hmm? Okay, I will nominate Joseph Paluzzi for chairman.
Second.
Do we do one at a time now?
You would ask if there are any further nominations.
Are there any further nominations?
If there are none, you can take a vote on that one.
Okay.
Assuming you accept?
Yes, I'll accept. I changed my mind.
Took pity on us.
Yeah. Roll call then. Roll call.
Scott Bradley,
Or I'm sorry, I meant voice vote is fine.
Voice vote is fine? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Now, a nomination for Vice Chairman. I'd like to nominate Scott Spradley.
I second.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay. Are there any discussions?
Further nominations?
Further nominations? Then, all in favor?
Aye.
There we go. Congratulations, Vice Chair. Thank you. I owe you an apology. I said Steve, and I meant Scott. When to say the
Everybody was
not the
waiting
first.
for Steve to start.
Yeah.
You get to play musical chairs or?
Oh, okay, we get to say what we are.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Do you have a preference, Penny? Do you have a preference? No, it just needs to be next to
Oh, okay, so that's done. Board comments? Any board comments? Open?
Any topic?
I
Yeah,
think so.
I just want to talk a little bit because we received these two sheets.
Not, if it's not anything that was on your agenda.
Right.
Okay,
Due process.
Okay.
So would there be a time we could talk about that, or would that have been?
When the applicant is present would be the time for that.
this was issued by the city, our city.
I know, but it involves the applicant's case. It's a quasi judicial matter. And so when they're not present and we're not on their agenda item, you could be creating a problem to discuss it now.
And I don't want to create a problem.
Okay, any other board comments? Then someone make a motion for adjournment?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, all in favor?
That's great.